Archaeologists say they discovered the possible biblical site visited by Jesus Christ after his resurrection, Emmaus, or Emmaus in European and Greek. Is it, though, the correct area? The Arab village of Emmaus, or Emmaus, was leveled by Israel following the Six-Day War in 1967, and its ruins are in Ayalon, or Canada Park, 2 kilometers north of Latrun Junction. At Latrun, ruins of the large Byzantine church with mosaic floors, within which was built a smaller Crusader church. That Crusader church was said to be the original Emmaus, or Nicopolis. We'll see that later in one of the pages that I found, having to do with seeing the Holy Land. But let's go into the article first. This is on Sputnik News. Even as the archaeological team brought forward the findings regarding the possible location of Emmaus, the ancient Israeli town, other experts urged caution, noting that it remains merely a hypothesis at this point, because we'll see why later. We'll read it together. A team of archaeologists operating in the vicinity of Jerusalem recently unearthed a millennia-old fortification which might help identify the location of the town of Emmaus. It's a town in which the New Testament names as a place where Jesus made one of his appearances, not his first appearance, it's one of the appearances after his resurrection. According to Hartz, the Franco-Israeli team discovered an ancient Hellenistic fortification which was possibly built by the Seleucid general Bakidis, who defeated Judas Maccabeus. We read that in the Maccabees of the Old Testament. And this was done at Kiryat Yearim, a hill that overlooks the western approach to Jerusalem. Quote, the importance of this site, its dominant position over Jerusalem, was felt again and again through time, in the 8th century BC, and then again in the Hellenistic period, and then again after the first Jewish revolt and the sack of Jerusalem in 17 AD. This is what Tel Aviv University archaeologist Israel Finkelstein said. Having consulted historical accounts detailing the list of fortifications erected by Bakidis, he says the only known case of large-scale fortification construction in Judea during this period, and quote, as Thomas Romer, a professor of biblical studies at the Collège de France, explained, the researchers noticed that while Kiryat Yearim is not mentioned there, the lists do include one location to the west of Jerusalem that was known to Josephus and to the author of 1 Maccabees at Emmaus, as Emmaus. Now, with that in mind, and considering the apparent lack of any other known Hellenistic strongholds west of Jerusalem, Finkelstein and Romer now believe that the hill and the adjacent town of Abu Ghosh should be identified as Emmaus, but we'll see what happens later on. Romer also pointed out that there are ancient traditions linking Kiryat Yearim and Abu Ghosh to Emmaus, with Crusaders building the Church of Resurrection in the town in the 12th century. However, Benjamin Isaac, emeritus professor of ancient history from Tel Aviv University, urged caution, noting that while Finkelstein and Romer have a good case archaeologically, geographically, topographically, their hypothesis is just that, a hypothesis at this time. Now, let's go together and see what the map says. Oh, by the way, the images that I have of Jesus Christ were actually, except for the painting by Carl Bloch of the 19th century, the images were actually photographs of him when he appeared to people in various locations worldwide, from Colombia to Italy to France, around the First World War, Second World War. Obviously, that's when they had photographic machines. And there, where he's wearing a veil over his head, he asked the person who took a picture of him to put a veil over his head as a bridegroom, because he is the eternal bridegroom. So, he gave the explanation, take a picture of me so that people will know that I did live and that I was resurrected, that I am life and the resurrection, and they will know that it is me. And you notice that he takes the same stance to have the same profile. He says, this is what I looked like when I was with you. And that's basically all the pictures are the same. He has the same hairstyle and the same eyes and everything. And now let's go and read what the locations may be from what the apostle, the disciple, well, I don't know, was he a disciple? Well, he must have been, because he was walking on the road to Emmaus. And so he knew Christ even before Christ was crucified and resurrected. Let's go. Okay, I just want you to see the maps here having to do with Emmaus. You can see here the sites. Let's go into the map. Okay, this is Kiryat Yearim Abu Ghosh. This is Jerusalem here, with 3 roads, as we can see, 1, 2, 3. This is Jerusalem. This is Ha Motza, which is 30 stadiums, or about 5.5 kilometers or 3.5 miles. That's the Emmaus according to Josephus. Okay? And this one is the Emmaus according to the Crusaders. 60 stadiums, which is 11 kilometers or 7.5 miles, is Abu Ghosh Kiryat Yearim, of the location of what were the archaeologists that we just read. The article that we just read refers to this location. But the Byzantine Emmaus, Nicopolis, and it still is called Emmaus, I mean, you know, it's basically the same name, 160 stadium, or 29 kilometers, or 20 miles. But there's even more. There's another one here, the Emmaus of the Franciscans, 60 stadiums, just like this one, 60 stadiums right there, 11 kilometers, 7.5 miles. So take your pick. Now, you know, I don't know what the distance is, this one from that one. So if this is, it must be about 3 kilometers or so. Looks, you know. But this is weird because this one has the name that still sounds like Emmaus, Emmaus, right? So one is 60 stadiums, the other is 160. And it says here, positively locating the village of Emmaus has been made more difficult by conflicting distances from Jerusalem given the different texts of St. Luke's Gospel. Most texts include the earliest given the distance of 60 stadiums, which is here, but some give it as 160, which is here. A Roman stadium, the plural is stadia in Greek, stadia, equals 185 meters. 60 stadia would be about 11 kilometers, just under 7 miles right here. And 160 stadia would be 29.5, which would be around here, just over 18 miles, right? Several possible sites have been proposed over the centuries. The four most seriously considered are Nicopolis, known as Emmaus or Emmaus, near Latrun. Christians in the 4th century considered that this was the site of Luke's Emmaus, this one here, that is, Emmaus. Where are we? I missed something? St. Jerome, in one of his letters, even implied that it had a church built in the house of Cleopas. Cleopas was one of the 2 men walking on the road to Emmaus. The other was St. Luke, and as he describes it in his Gospel. So there were 2 men walking on the road to Emmaus, from Jerusalem to Emmaus, and it was afternoon. And one was St. Luke the Evangelist, and the other was Cleopas. And Jesus met up with them, or appeared to pretend he was passing by, but he asked him what they were talking about, and he started explaining the prophecies to them. Now, so that is the area of the house of Cleopas, right there, right? And I believe, though, they weren't going to Cleopas's house. They were going they stayed at an inn. But we'll read the passage. So Cleopas was supposed to have a house there. The tradition was so strong that it may have resulted in scribes correcting the gospel text to read 160 rather than 60. Nevertheless, some of the most ancient manuscripts, such as the Codex Sinaiticus, have 160 stadia. Around 220, following the delegation led by the prefect of Emmaus, Sextus Iulius Africanus, the prominent Christian, Emperor Elagabulus gave Emmaus the status of the city and changed its name to Nicopolis. Well, there's only one Nicopolis, it's this one here. Right? Nicopolis. The town was wiped out by a plague in 639, but re-established, became the last station of the Crusaders on their way to Jerusalem in 1099, and by then the identification with Luke's gospel had largely been lost. Let's remember that a lot of people didn't even know how to read at that time, or they didn't even have texts of the biblical writings. In modern times, Amwas Nicopolis was again accepted as Emmaus by 19th century biblical scholar Edward Robinson. The edification was augmented by revelations received by Blessed Mariam of Jesus Crucified, a nun of the Carmelite monastery of Bethlehem. Advocates of Nicopolis raised the possibility that the disciples arrived back at Jerusalem the day after encountering Christ. The Arab village of Amwas was leveled by Israelis following Six Day War. We said that. Now, let's go back. I think I missed something here. Did I miss something? No, I don't think so. Okay. And then we have the passage, the journey to Emmaus. St. Luke 24:13 to 55. And let's see. On the road to Emmaus. Now, the same day, two of them were going, Luke wrote this. Two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. Let's see, 7 miles is where? Where is it? Our map? Well, 7 miles then is Abu Ghosh. And that makes, it's logical because it was afternoon, and I don't think they stayed at a hotel. They stayed and they had dinner there, and they asked him to come in for dinner. And they would never walk at night for safety, and they didn't want people robbing them. And it was also, you go and rest at night. And that's one of their explanations why they asked Jesus to stay with them, because the night was falling, was becoming. Let's remember, it was spring, it was Easter, and we have 12 hours a day, 12 hours a night. So around 6 o'clock in the evening, you have darkness falling. So he had to stay. That's why they asked him to stay with them. And it was an inn, and obviously, Cleopas would not go another 13 miles, to walk another 13 miles towards his house in Amwas, even though it was down the road. It was a longer way to Amwas from Kiryat Yearim than Kiryat Yearim to Jerusalem, right? 60 to 160. So it's another 100 stadia more. So it makes sense that they were at Kiryat Yearim, that they stayed at, on the road to Emmaus. They didn't say it was Emmaus. They said he met them on the road to Emmaus. But let's go and say, they were talking to each other. They were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Okay, they were talking with each other about everything. Sometimes there are mistranslations in texts as well, but this was in Greek. But anyway, Let me find it in Greek. Luke 24, Greek text. So we can translate it in Greek. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's go to Luke 13. Και ιδού δύο εξ αυτών, and behold, ιδού, two of them, εξ αυτών εν αυτή την ημέρα, on that day, πορευόμενοι, walking, εις κόμην, απέχουσα στάδιους 60, they were walking towards a village that was 60 stadium from Jerusalem. Η όνομα Emmaus. Okay? 60 stadium from Jerusalem, Emmaus. So that confirms this. That confirms this Emmaus of 60 stadiums, right there. Kiryat Yarim, Abu Ghosh. All right. So, where are we? Okay, and as they talked to each other, discussing the things with, they were talking with each other about everything that had happened. The crucifixion, the passion, the resurrection. Even the general resurrection, not just, okay, let's say nobody believed in Jesus Christ resurrecting, because there were people that wanted to downplay all that. Well, what about everybody else that was resurrected and walked into Jerusalem? What did they have to say about that? Okay, they say, okay, he wasn't the Messiah, he wasn't resurrected. They stole his body. What about everybody else from all the cemeteries that were resurrected and walked into Jerusalem healthy and alive? What did they have to say about all that? Can you imagine? Let's say you were living there and that happened. What would you think? You say, of course Jesus was resurrected. Even all these people that did less than him were resurrected. These righteous, faithful people. He did a lot more than them. Why shouldn't he be resurrected? But anyway, you can just imagine being there, what was going on. So they were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. You see, this, what we read in Greek, is 7 miles inside. It says 60 stadiums. See, all this has been changed. This is not the original text. You see how terrible it is when they change the text? Why would they do that? Anyway, Jesus himself came up walking along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He didn't look like what he was. He had a different appearance. Just like in the garden at the tomb. He appeared to Mary Magdalene and the other women. One of them, of course, was the Virgin Mary. But he had another appearance. Why is that? She didn't recognize him. Why is that? Because from what the theologians in Greek Orthodoxy tell us, in Christian Orthodoxy, it's because he wants to impress on us to treat everyone around us as if it was Christ. And Christ himself taught us that, be careful, because the stranger that you have in front of you may be an angel of God. And he will be witnessing for you or against you on your judgment. And that happens, by the way, also when everyone passes away from this phase of existence, the biological phase, that is. And he asked them, what are you discussing together as you walk along? They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days? And Jesus asked, what things? They replied, about Jesus of Nazareth. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him, but we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning and did not find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus. He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all the prophets that have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. So that's Luke 24:13. And the Gospel of Mark also refers to this. Mark 16:12 has a similar account that describes the appearance of Jesus to two disciples while they were walking in the country at about the same time in the Gospel narrative, although it does not name the disciples or their destination as Emmaus. Afterwards, Jesus appeared in a different form to two of them while they were walking in the country. These returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. Now, also it's been suggested in the Ethiopian, that the Ethiopian eunuch story, the financial minister of the Queen Candace of Africa, Acts 8:26-40, is a much discussed parallel to the Emmaus narrative, since there are some recognizable similarities between the two. Each event culminates with a ritual, the breaking and distributing of bread at Emmaus, and the baptism of the Ethiopian along the road. What remains as a common theme in both stories is the necessarily hermeneutical connection between the scriptures and the Jesus event. The scriptures are to be interpreted in the light of the good news of Jesus, Acts 8, and the Jesus event can only be understood in light of the scriptures, Luke 24. And in both cases, again, Saint Philip, the deacon Philip, who was brought by an angel to explain the scriptures, to minister as an apostle to the finance minister of Queen Candace, the eunuch, disappeared after that, after baptism. He also disappeared. And that's what made the eunuch, the Ethiopian eunuch, believe even more that obviously this is more than reality. It's hyper-reality. It's divine intervention. So it was the journey to Emmaus with St. Luke and St. Cleopas. Gregory the Great says in his lecture, his homily, he says, "They did not in fact have faith in him, yet they were talking about him. The Lord therefore appeared to them, but did not show them a face they could recognize." This is St. Gregory the Great. In this way, the Lord enacted outwardly before their physical eyes what was going on in them inwardly before the eyes of their hearts. For inwardly they simultaneously loved him and doubted him. Therefore the Lord was outwardly present to them, and at the same time did not reveal his identity. Since they were speaking about him, he showed them his presence, but since they doubted him, he hid from them the appearance by which they could have recognized him. Isn't that something? Jesus let them tell about their anxieties and pains. He let them grieve and mourn by expressing the root causes. Jesus emphatically listened to them, who poured out their crises and doubts. and used scripture so that they could better understand suffering and glory. During the journey to Emmaus, according to Alfred McBride, Jesus patiently guided the two disciples from hopelessness to celebration, and also intended to nourish the two disciples' faith to such an extent that they can see his real presence in the breaking of the bread. Breaking of the bread, the bread of life, by the way, is Jesus Christ. Bethlehem. From a pastoral perspective, John Mossy writes that meditating upon the Emmaus pilgrimage may help one when experiencing one's own dark nights. During such course of action, according to Mossy, one should realize that Jesus compassionately walks as a friend on one's own journey, emphatically listens to one's sorrows and hesitations, and spends quality time accompanying one as one goes through the process of inner healing. And they said, "Stay with us." As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he were going farther, but they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening, the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. And this, what we read, in the breaking of the bread, their eyes were opened and they recognized him. B.P. Robinson argues that this means that the recognition occurred in the course of the meal. While Raymond, that is also the Holy Eucharist, Raymond Blacketer notes that many, perhaps even most, commentators, ancient and modern and in between, have seen the revelation of Jesus' identity in the breaking of bread as having some kind of Eucharistic reference or implication. John Paul II said that when the two disciples urged Jesus to stay with them, Jesus afterward responded by giving them a way to stay in him by entering into a profound communion with Jesus through the sacrament of the Eucharist. John 15:4. Soon after Jesus agreed to their request to stay, according to the Pope, Jesus' face would disappear, yet the Master would stay with them, hidden in the breaking of the bread, the Holy Eucharist. He was with them and in them, which had opened their eyes to recognize him. When minds are enlightened and hearts are unkindled, signs begin to speak. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, I'll leave links below for you for this. And yeah, I guess that's it. The 60 stadiums from Jerusalem. And who knows, hopefully they'll find the inn, that because that's not where the house was. His house was about 100 kilometers down the road. Cleopas's house, that is. I'll leave links below for you for this. God bless you. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.